Imagine yourself entering the room and noticing a whisper of indifference in the eyes of someone who once saw you as the center of their universe. This silent gap is not merely the result of passing rebellion, but of a mismatch between unconscious desires and conscious gestures that, little by little, erode the bond of respect. Have you ever felt that sharp emptiness, driving almost painful questions? What did I do to deserve this distance? Or, why does my authority seem to fade day after day? It is at this point that the child's psyche, governed by drives and emotional defenses, shuts down like a flower bud before it ever has a chance to bloom anew. Through the Freudian lens, we recognize that a child's respect does not spring solely from the imposition of limits, but from the delicate harmony between the family superego and the inner drives that cry out for security and recognition. Every disapproving gesture or impersonal word reinforces an invisible wall erected in the child's unconscious, creating a barrier that compels the child to withdraw. If we wish to dismantle this wall, we must adopt habits that resonate with their deepest sensitivity, revealing themselves not as commands, but as invitations to emotional reconnection. Notice how, by re-establishing rituals of deep listening, a steady, patient gaze, a silence that welcomes unspoken words, we can awaken the child's dormant heart, allowing them to perceive that their yearnings have value and that in you they find genuine compassion. This practice, simple as it may seem, mobilizes fundamental unconscious forces, signaling to the most primitive instincts that even amid emotional turmoil, there is a safe harbor. And upon feeling protected, the little ego bows into the embrace of renewed trust. Next, it is essential to embrace the habit of celebrating effort, not just outcomes. By valuing each attempt, however imperfect, you nourish the child's superego, reinforcing the internal belief that every step toward autonomy deserves applause. This strategy, anchored in Freud's theory of life drives, encourages the child to integrate their achievements into their sense of identity, transforming respect into a reflection of their rising self-esteem. Magic happens when, at the core of their being, they understand that to respect you is to honor their own inner journey of accomplishment. Finally, dive into the habit of sharing vulnerabilities, subtly revealing your own struggles and lessons learned. This gesture, laden with emotional courage, dismantles the adult's untouchable aura and establishes a peer-to-peer relationship in which respect is built on reciprocity. When the child perceives that you too face internal storms and emerge stronger, they find a mirror for their own inner world, recognizing in you not merely an authority figure, but a companion on their journey. It is through these confidences and mutual respect that the bond is renewed and the true link of respect blossoms again. Feel the weight of the silence that hangs in the room the moment you step over the threshold. It is not merely the absence of words, but the echo of unmet expectations, of unconscious desires crashing against the fortress of neglect. It is at that instant that the child, in their inner world brimming with conflicting drives, records an invisible wound whose pain reverberates through the superego even before they know the term. From the Freudian perspective, every gesture of indifference acts like a painful stimulus, abruptly activating the reality principle and forcing the child's ego to erect defenses against frustration. When we recognize this inner movement, we can transform the silence into a bridge, a gaze full of attention capable of signaling to the child's unconscious that there remains space to be heard and valued. Now imagine proposing a moment of shared confession. You speak of an old shy fear you've carried since childhood, your voice trembling with nostalgia. This baring of the adult self provokes a curious resonance in the child's psyche, which, upon recognizing vulnerability in you, feels permitted to reveal its own insecurities. Next, initiate a ritual of affirmation, where every small initiative the child takes is met with genuine celebration, a smile that lasts just long enough to ignite their inner spark, an embrace that carries within it the promise of safety. The libidinal pressure of seeking approval softens, and the child experiences the superego as an ally rather than a tormentor. At the heart of this dynamic, respect blooms, not the kind stamped by rule imposition, but that forged in mutual recognition of fragilities and strengths. By nourishing the child's ego with symbolic gestures, a loving note tucked into their lunchbox, a shared secret before bedtime, You quietly rewire the neural pathways that associate your presence with a primary source of emotional security. Here lies the power of naming the feeling. I notice you feel forgotten when I leave for work too early. I felt that way myself when I was a boy. The child hears not just words, but the unconscious pulse of a bond renewed, and begins to feel like the protagonist of a shared story, where respect and empathy take turns center stage. Finally, celebrate the shared silence, a moment when no sound is necessary because the encounter has already occurred within. This sonic anticlimax carries the emotional tension to its peak, generously returning to the child the sense that, even in mute stillness, their presence is celebrated. Right after that silent acknowledgement, notice how the child's gaze becomes a mirror reflecting unspoken longings. There is an urgency in that sparkle, the desire to belong, to feel part of a universe where their emotions matter as much as those of the adults around them. By recognizing that gleam, you engage the pleasure principle against the reality principle, allowing the child's ego to settle on firmer ground, one more conducive to the blossoming of trust. It is on this fertile ground that we must sow the habit of transformative dialogue. At a routine moment, perhaps while preparing a meal or tidying up toys, point to a puzzle piece or a kitchen utensil and ask with genuine curiosity, "What does this awaken in you?" This simple question opens doors to the unconscious, inviting the child to explore their desires and fears without fear of judgment. As the words flow, offer a meaningful pause, a silence inhabited, in which the sound of one's own breathing becomes the soundtrack of the internal process. This introspective suspense, reinforced by Freud's theory of the representative catastrophe, intensifies the connection, for each second of waiting heightens the anticipation of understanding and acceptance. Next, incorporate the ritual of empathetic feedback. Carefully restate what you have heard, giving back to the child their own emotions translated into an adult voice. "So you feel that sometimes I don't understand what's going on inside you." When the child hears this reflection, they feel seen and understood at the deepest level, which strengthens the libidinal bond between you. Then allow the child to choose a symbolic gesture of reconciliation, a secret handshake, a gentle pat on the back, or even a prearranged smile. This silent pact reinforces the collective superego, creating a space of complicity where respect and affection walk hand in hand. Equally important is cultivating moments of mutual admiration. Share something you genuinely admire about the child, their creativity, sense of humor, or courage in facing a fear, and do so dramatically, almost theatrically, amplifying the emotional impact. This positive reinforcement activates the life drive, eros, nourishing the child's self-esteem and encouraging them to associate respect with genuine recognition. Finally, introduce a snippet of family narrative. Tell a brief story from your own childhood, an episode in which you faced a similar doubt. By doing so, you not only break down the rigidity of the idealized adult, but also offer a model of overcoming, showing that respect is not static, but the result of continuous effort and reciprocity. Upon waking the next morning, notice how each repeated gesture grants security to the child's psychic apparatus. Establishing a morning ritual, a brief shared breakfast followed by a silent hug before departure, acts as an anchor in the child's unconscious, signaling that even amid the hustle, there is a permanent space of welcome. This routine habit is no mere protocol. It is a positive stimulus that reinforces the bond of affection and reaffirms within the superego a relationship of unshakable trust. Within this cadence arises the opportunity to introduce effective boundaries that, far from constraining, liberate. By defining, with firmness and tenderness, the time for play or the moment to tidy up belongings, you teach the child's ego that freedom only flourishes when anchored in structure. This balanced tension between pleasure and reality invites the child to safely experiment with autonomy, honoring Freud's principle of equilibrium between life drives and the demands of the external world. Later, allow yourself to highlight the importance of shared silence during the farewell ritual. A simple gesture, holding eye contact for a few seconds before closing the door, intensifies the emotional release, producing a micro-cathartic collapse that eases separation anxieties. This nonverbal pause reinforces the unconscious message that the bond remains intact even in absence, activating deep security mechanisms in the child's psyche. Next, act as narrator of your own life, bringing forth memories of times when you, as a child, feared being left alone. By recounting, your voice thick with emotion, how you overcame that solitary fear, you connect the child's drives to adult resilience strategies, fostering a movement of positive internalization. When the child recognizes themselves in your story, they strengthen their ego by realizing they too possess internal resources to face insecurity. Immediately afterward, include the habit of a symbolic farewell gesture, a simple fist bump with the child's fist, which upon contact sparks a surge of empathy and activates the life drive. This brief bodily sharing reshapes the relational dynamic, reminding the unconscious that the bond is both physical and emotional, reinforcing the relational superego that underpins mutual respect. Do not overlook the power of a note left in an unexpected place. A single handwritten line on colorful paper can trigger a surprise effect, generating a dopamine peak in the child's brain. This anticipation and reward trigger associates your presence with moments of positive discovery, forging a lasting bond that endures well beyond the first reading. Finally, close the third block by inviting the child to join in a new ritual. Reinterpret an old memory together, perhaps an old photograph or a forgotten toy. This shared act of resignification promotes deep identification, as the object from the past becomes a catalyst for emotional reunion, activating latent memories and solidifying respect built upon the foundation of shared history. As dusk approaches, the atmosphere takes on hues of reflection, and this is the moment to introduce the habit of sharing small tasks together. Imagine inviting the child, with their delicate hands, to help you water a plant as their eyes fill with curiosity. The simple coordination of this daily gesture activates in the unconscious the life drive, nourishing the child's ego with a sense of usefulness and value, and linking your name to a positive actor on their journey of growth. Next, suggest a symbolic challenge, such as creating a memory board together, paper clippings, drawings, and small objects arranged almost ritualistically. As the child organizes each element, they experience the creative tension of decision-making, exercising the superego through choice setting and learning without even realizing it, that respect also springs from trust in their ability to create and reshape emotional patterns. As night draws near, introduce the act of writing a brief message on a folded piece of paper to be exchanged as a surprise before bedtime. This gesture of anticipation generates a small peak of mystery and reward, reinforcing dopamine release in the child's unconscious and forging a lasting association between you and moments of emotional discovery. Shortly afterward, recount a dramatic episode from your own life, a moment of intense doubt that led you to discover a hidden strength within yourself. Use Freudian metaphors, comparing the psyche to the depths of an ocean, and describe how, by diving into the shadows, you emerged with a treasure of self-knowledge. This narrative anchor invites the child to dive into their own inner universe, recognizing themselves as the protagonist of a psychic adventure. In the twilight of the bedroom, propose a shared act of care. Light a small candle and let its flame accompany you in a few seconds of silence. This brief interlude of light connects you to the reality principle while celebrating the pleasure principle, creating a safe space for latent emotions to arise without fear of judgment. Then encourage the child to draw their own safe zone on a piece of paper, a little imaginary corner where all anxieties dissipate. By translating them into shapes and colors, you activate the process of psychic elaboration and reinforce the internal belief that mutual respect also involves embracing the deepest vulnerabilities. Finally, reveal a fragment of a shared future. Speak about an outing you've planned together, passionately detailing every element of the experience. This anticipation primes the mind for excitement and creates a bond of expectation with you, raising the level of trust and reinforcing the notion that respect is also built through the projection of moments of shared joy. When the midday bridge rises over the routine, introduce the child to the power of a conscious pause. Invite them to close their eyes for a few moments and pay attention to the rhythm of their own heart. This minimalist interval, aligned with Freud's technique of free internal association, allows thoughts to float without censorship, intensifying the perception of the unconscious and strengthening the feeling of mutual trust. Next, share a fragment of your professional or creative journey, revealing an insecurity that nearly paralyzed you. Describe how, when you faced that inner abyss, you discovered an unexplored resource, a breath of courage that shifted old barriers. This metaphorical narrative encourages the child to recognize their own capacity for overcoming obstacles, reinforcing the bond between respect and genuine admiration. Shortly afterward, provide a shared caregiving ritual. Choose together a plant or a pet to nurture, establishing weekly tasks in which each gesture, watering, feeding, observing, becomes a symbol of responsibility and cooperation. This practice activates the life drive and teaches, by example, that respect flourishes when we see the other as someone worthy of care and attention. As the hours pass, propose a brief experiment in emotional mirroring. Ask the child to imitate your smile and then your serious gaze, immersing them in the experience of decoding expressions and emotions. This playful exercise not only entertains, but also mobilizes the social unconscious, teaching them to recognize and respect emotional nuances, an essential foundation for healthy relationships. Later, strengthen the bond by creating a secret box together, a container into which each of you drops on folded notes your wishes, fears, or dreams. Every week, open one note, offering space for empathetic listening and encouragement of inner expression. This symbolic alliance fortifies the relational superego by establishing a mutual commitment to confidentiality and valuing the child's drives. Don't forget to introduce the habit of scientific curiosity. Carry out a small home experiment, mixing colors or observing insects in the garden, encouraging questions and hypotheses. By sparking this fascination, you evoke the principle of cognitive pleasure, nourishing the child's ego with discovery and associating your presence with moments of excitement and learning. To deepen the connection, tell a Freudian analogy about the iceberg of the mind. While the visible part floats on the surface, the greater portion remains hidden beneath. Ask the child to draw their own emotional iceberg, revealing which feelings reside in the depths. This externalization process reinforces their sense of internal control and shows that respect also means embracing what is hidden. When the late afternoon shadows creep into the space, propose a practice of active listening. Invite the child to lie down beneath the stars, even if it's only a sky projected onto a dark blanket. Ask them to speak aloud every sensation that arises, the soft touch of the fabric, the sparkle of the little lights, while you remain in complete silence, absorbing each word. This moment of psychic undressing deepens introspection and reinforces the trust bond, for the child's unconscious senses that their stories are received without judgment. Immediately afterward, share a narrative of inner transformation. Tell how, during a time of uncertainty, you turned to a symbolic object, perhaps an old clock, to remind yourself of the value of the present moment. Use this metaphor to spark reflection on the brevity of shared instance, encouraging the child to cherish presence and mutual attention as sources of emotional security. Next, introduce the habit of co-creating an emotion library. Each of you writes on a folded piece of paper one feeling experienced during the week, then places it in a small chest. Set aside a moment to open one of these notes, read it aloud, and briefly discuss what that emotion means. This ritual of externalization bolsters the psychic elaboration process and teaches the child that respect also means naming what pulses within. Further on, suggest a little shadow theater. With a flashlight and nimble hands, create figures that dance on the wall, representing internal conflicts and reconciliations. By playfully dramatizing unconscious tensions, you allow the child to dynamically recognize their inner struggles, transforming them into narrative and fostering emotional catharsis. Then, encourage a reciprocal act of care. Offer the child a gentle hand massage as you share a secret of gratitude. This tactile contact sends unconscious signals of safe closeness, reactivating the pleasure principle and cementing the association between your presence and emotional comfort. Don't forget to spark curiosity about dreams. Ask the child to describe, in an almost whisper, the last dream they had, then share one of your own. Discussing dream symbols brings you both closer to the hidden recesses of the mind, validating the child's inner world and reinforcing the supportive superego that guides mutual respect. Finally, engage in a shared sensory experience. Cook a simple recipe together, exploring scents, textures, and flavors. As you taste each stage, ask questions that evoke emotional memories, linking gustatory pleasure to recollections of special moments. This sensory bond activates the limbic system and associates your presence with joyful discoveries. As night deepens, invite the child to explore the layers of silence together, as if unfolding the pages of an invisible book. Guide them to notice every sound, the gentle beat of their heart, the rustle of fabric, and then share the most subjective perception, the inner pulse echoing like a rhythmic drum. This plunge into silence creates a hypnotic scene, activating in the unconscious the register of full attention and strengthening the emotional bond. Next, offer a Freudian tale of lucid dreaming, in which the protagonist becomes the architect of their own dream universe. Describe in detail the sensation of flying over invented landscapes and interacting with symbolic figures, leading the child to project their fears and desires onto safe ground. This metaphor of dream control rekindles inner confidence and reinforces the idea that respecting you also means allowing them to command their own inner world. Then, suggest a brief dramatization exercise. Improvise a scene in which the adult fails at something trivial, perhaps knocking over a glass of water, and ask the child to propose creative solutions. Seeing you vulnerable and open, their ego grows, learning that respect springs from humility and the willingness to learn from one's mistakes. Shortly afterward, begin the ritual of a silent secret exchange. Each person writes on a small piece of fabric a symbol representing a hidden emotion, then rolls it up and swaps the fabric with reverent care. This tactile, almost sacred gesture activates the pleasure principle through textile novelty and reinforces emotional complicity, for each symbol carries an intimate fragment exchanged without words. As the candle flame flickers, encourage the child to imagine a dialogue between two parts of their psyche, a confident self and a fearful self, and dramatize the voices of these figures. This inner theater, anchored in Freudian dramatization technique, allows latent conflicts to be externalized and integrated, transforming tension into a healing narrative. Then, share a fragment of affectionate memory involving a simple object, a beloved toy or a forgotten book, and reveal how that artifact became a talisman of comfort during uncertain times. By exposing this emotional bond with the object, you teach that respect also means recognizing the importance of small emotional supports in building resilience. Finally, propose a trust test. Close your eyes and have the child guide you along a short path, using only their voice and gentle touches on your arm. This reversal of leadership strengthens their sense of child sovereignty and demonstrates in practice that respect is built through reciprocal care and granting the other permission to lead. At the break of a new dawn, invite the child to practice projective visions. Ask them to close their eyes and imagine 3 possible scenarios for the coming day, describing each as if performing in a little mental theater. This anticipation exercise engages the pleasure principle while challenging the ego to cope with varied expectations, bolstering confidence in their own ability to navigate everyday uncertainties. Next, reveal a snippet of memories from your school days, sharing an episode when you felt excluded and found refuge in reading or drawing. By exposing this experience, you show that respect also arises from acknowledging inner wounds and the strategies of overcoming them, offering a model of resilience for the child to internalize as a guide. Shortly thereafter, create an emotional mural map. On a large sheet of paper, paint colors symbolizing feelings you experienced over the past week: joy, fear, curiosity, insecurity, and then invite the child to pick one of those feelings to explore in an open dialogue. This pictorial gesture stimulates symbolic externalization of drives, promoting psychic elaboration through art. As the sun reaches its zenith, introduce a brief moment of bodily synchronization. Sit facing each other, gently place your wrists together, and, in silence, Feel the beats that echo the rhythm of life. This act of organic synchrony reinforces the sense of union and lets the child feel, in their own body, the mutual support that underpins respect. Then narrate an adapted Freudian parable. Tell the story of a young explorer who, lost in a labyrinth of mirrors, discovered that the way out lay in accepting his own reflections rather than fleeing from them. This mirrored labyrinth metaphor invites the child to face their emotions without resistance, teaching that true respect begins with self-acceptance. Shortly after, propose the ritual of the silent list. Ask each of you to think of 3 qualities in the other, but reveal only one, keeping the other 2 in mind. When you share the first, leave space for the child to reflect and guess the remaining qualities, stimulating curiosity and the desire to attend to each other's best attributes. No less important, practice the restorative word gesture. Choose a word with calming power, such as shelter or light, and repeat it slowly throughout a brief dialogue, creating an atmosphere where sound and meaning work together to neutralize emotional tension. This vocal technique mobilizes the parasympathetic response, promoting tranquility and strengthening the association between your voice and the feeling of safety. As twilight approaches, invite the child to draw an imaginary path in sand or clay, tracing curves that represent the day's emotions. By guiding your fingers together along this symbolic relief, you activate the life drive and teach that respect is also built through mindful touch of one's own sensations, showing that every feeling deserves to be mapped and embraced. Shortly thereafter, share a reminiscence from your own learning journey, recounting how a seemingly insignificant mistake, perhaps a slip of the tongue, became a precious lesson. This Freudian confession of a lapse not only humanizes the adult figure, but reinforces that respect grows from the humility of admitting failures and extracting new resources from them. Next, propose a brief metaphor duel. Challenge the child to create a comparison between a feeling and an everyday object while you do the same. By exchanging these symbolic images, you both exercise the psychic apparatus of elaboration and experience firsthand the empathy that underlies mutual respect. As night settles in, introduce the habit of a short guided meditation. Invite them to close their eyes and imagine a vast field where each thought is a cloud passing by, free to vanish without leaving a trace. This technique of neutral observation encourages the child to notice their own unrest without being swallowed by it, demonstrating that respect also means giving inner space. Soon after, tell a small adapted Freudian parable. Speak of a gardener who, in trying to pull every weed from a bed, ended up ruining the most beautiful flowers. This metaphor illustrates the importance of discerning what must be pruned and what must be nurtured, teaching that respect means attending to the nuances of the psyche with care. Then, propose a gesture of silent sharing. Offer each other a fruit or a treat, dividing it into equal pieces without a word. This moment of silent cooperation strengthens the bond of trust, showing that respect is also expressed in generous, unassuming actions. Finally, honor the passage of time. Schedule a future meeting, perhaps a special outing or activity, and emphasize how eagerly you both await that moment. This anticipation trigger reinforces the notion that respect projects into the future, fueling the motivation to continuously nurture the bond. At the dawn of our provisional conclusion, introduce the child to the power of written self-reflection. Offer paper and pencil so they can record, in a few lines, what they felt throughout this experience. As they write, show patience and genuine interest, signaling that every internalized word deserves attention and respect. Next, share the emotion of reading something you yourself wrote in a moment of doubt, revealing how the act of putting your own inquietudes on paper was liberating. This confession about the therapeutic value of writing reinforces that mutual respect also manifests in recognizing one's internal creative process. Shortly thereafter, create a small closing ritual. Light a symbolic candle together, and as you extinguish its flame, silently ask for protection so that the respect and connection you've cultivated remain aflame in both your hearts. This ceremonial gesture leaves a deep emotional imprint, associating the journey with a seal of affective sacredness. As the flame dies, gently ask, What else would you like to explore within your own world? This question broadens the horizon of possibilities, showing that respect involves continuous curiosity about the other's inner universe. Then propose a slow dance of bare feet in a cozy space, feeling the contact with the ground and with one another in each step. This shared bodily movement induces sensory synchrony, reinforcing the bond and reminding that respect also means walking side by side at each other's pace. Shortly after, tell one last brief Freudian metaphor. Imagine the mind as a kaleidoscope in constant rotation, where each colorful fragment represents a memory or desire. By gently turning this imaginary piece, we reveal new internal patterns, showing that respect springs from the willingness to look together at these multiple facets. To close, offer a kiss or embrace that lasts the exact length of a prolonged sigh, unhurried, allowing the contact to convey all the affection you've accumulated. This final touch catalyzes the release of oxytocin, symbolizing the triumph of the restored bond. The moment we fall silent on our final words, we realize that something has shifted not only in the adult-child dynamic, but in the very way we carry our deepest affections. Every shared gesture, from the silent embrace to the secret note, from the knowing glance to the synchronized sigh, has woven into the invisible fabric of the psyche a network of trust that withstands time and silence. This web, forged by Freudian principles of empathetic listening and acknowledgement of inner drives, continues to pulse even after the lights go out. When we mentally revisit each ritual, the breakfast that became an anchor, the shadow theater that unveiled conflicts, the silent dance that united hearts, we feel the resonance of a higher purpose, to teach that true respect is not imposed but earned through the art of welcoming the other in all their depths. It is this very reverence for the hidden layers of the unconscious that invites us to look at ourselves with the same tenderness and curiosity, acknowledging our wounds and celebrating the victories that shape us. More than closing a cycle, this moment is a portal to a continuous journey of discovery. The restored bond is merely the starting point for a path where every named emotion, every shared vulnerability, and every moment of silence become maps of a fertile inner universe. The true alchemy takes place when we realize that, by deeply respecting another, we return to our own self a space of freedom and care that had been forgotten in the depths of the soul. May this symphony of practices and reflections echo within you, inviting you to revisit these gestures whenever you sense the abyss of indifference creeping in. Ask yourself, which inner map have I neglected, and what ritual of connection can I establish today to reignite the flame of respect? That question, planted like a seed in the soil of consciousness, will germinate into new discoveries and strengthen the bond with those who matter most. If, at the end of this video, your heart has been moved by the depth of this proposal, leave your mark of presence. Like this content to celebrate the power of empathy, share in the comments the experience that resonated most with you, tag someone who needs to rediscover the value of respect, and subscribe to continue walking this journey of emotional reconnection together. After all, we can only transform the world when we transform the way we see and hold ourselves.